This is a political drive-by shooting by Jack Smith, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Merrick Garland, and this judge, Tanya Chutkan, because, look, they know they can't beat Trump at the ballot box on November 5th, so they want to do everything they can to politicize and weaponize our justice system to try to rig the election.
Every day, the Trump derangement syndrome we see aired in public is really extraordinary. But look, I'm not an attorney. You are, which is why I wanted to have you on to explain to the folks who watch the Stone Zone how outrageous this is. The release of a document, in many cases, I think in most cases, in which the president's accusers are actually still anonymous because their names are redacted, causing the media to do this huge guessing game of, well, Mark Meadows said this and this advisor said that. Some of them unidentified. This is pretty outrageous, is it not? It's attempt to make their case against Trump before the election.
It is the Kamala Democrats' pathetic attempt at an October surprise. It shows their desperation. Remember, the Biden-Kamala Justice Department waited 30 months to bring these bogus charges against President Trump, and they brought charges in two different venues. They brought charges down in the Southern District of Florida for the non-crime of a former president having his presidential records in the office of former president, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act. But the problem is that Jack Smith, Biden and Kamala's special counsel, didn't like the fact that he actually drew a fair judge for Trump, Judge Eileen Cannon. So Jack Smith did this unprecedented move of bringing a second charge against Trump in D.C. for the non-crime of objecting to a presidential election, which is allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887 and the First Amendment. Democrats objected to Republican wins in 1969, 2001, 2005, 2017. We don't see Al Gore and John Kerry and Hillary Clinton in prison, right? And Jack Smith brought 4 charges against Trump, including 2 charges that the Supreme Court in June in the Fisher decision said that the Justice Department cannot bring, related to a post-Enron obstruction of justice statute intended for corporate fraud that Biden and Kamala's Justice Department brought against their political enemies, including Trump. But Jack Smith ignored that and recharged Trump for those 2 charges the Supreme Court says he can't use. And then he also brought charges that are subject to presidential immunity that the Supreme Court ruled in June you can't do. You can't charge a president of the United States, any president of the United States, for his official acts, right? Not his personal acts, his official acts. And Jack Smith largely ignored that in this superseding indictment. And then they went to this D.C. Obama judge, Tanya Chutkan, this partisan hack in a robe, and they have this unprecedented, completely unfair procedure where Jack Smith lays out 165 pages of this one-sided political document, mere hearsay and other accusations against Trump in the October before the November 5th election, and Trump can't respond. This is a political drive-by shooting by Jack Smith, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Merrick Garland, and this judge, Tanya Chutkan, because, look, they know they can't beat Trump at the ballot box on November 5th, so they want to do everything they can to politicize and weaponize our justice system to try to rig the election.
Very, very well put. In the Florida documents case, in your legal career, have you ever heard of having a DC grand jury hear a case, taking the recordings of that and playing it for a South Florida grand jury where they had no opportunity to question those testifying for the purposes of rendering an indictment? Have you ever heard of that?
Well, no, and this is why Jack Smith did this, because he had another Obama judge in D.C., Beryl Howell, who is a partisan hack who did not protect the procedural and substantive due process rights of criminal defendants. in these proceedings. They steamrolled constitutional executive privilege going back 250 years to George Washington. Jack Smith knew that if he had a grand jury down in Florida, it actually may have had the proper constitutional and other legal safeguards that Beryl Howell ensured did not happen in DC. So no, look, they are out to get Trump. The only reason they're bringing these charges against Trump, again, they waited nearly 3 years, and then they bring these charges against Trump because they knew he was going to run for president again. This is all about taking out Trump through the legal process because they know Trump's going to beat Biden at the time and now Kamala like a drum on November 5th.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I noticed in the debate, at that exchange speaking about January 6th, when one of the moderators said basically challenging, having alternative electors in an election dispute was both unconstitutional and illegal, when in fact it is neither. President John F. Kennedy, fortunately for him, filed an alternative slate of delegates in Hawaii. Election night, it appeared that Vice President Nixon had won Hawaii. His electors were on the verge of being certified. And when the absentee ballots came in, JFK had won, but because he had formed an alternative elector slate, he was able to win the electoral votes of Hawaii. Also, a huge amount of this in the famous election of 1877. So fake electors is a word made up on MSNBC. There's no such thing as a fake elector. In Georgia, if you read the minutes of the meeting of the alternative electors, they said, we're filing a litigation. And in the event that we win that litigation, we would be required to have a slate of delegates, of electors. So we are forming this slate to preserve our legal rights. Yet they were charged anyway. By the way, I had nothing to do with selecting or choosing illegal electors, but I had read about it and I was aware of the Electoral College Act. So once again, they criminalize something that's not a crime. And when it comes to just questioning the election, which if you listen to the Walz's side of the debate is like one of the worst crimes in the world, you're right. Hillary questioned her election. Democrats for years insisted that they had been robbed when they hadn't. It's only when Donald Trump objected and they say, oh, it's an absurd conspiracy theory for you to think that there were irregularities or anomalies or outright fraud in the 2020 election. When we see the fraud unfolding in the Georgia courts before our very eyes. These aren't things that I'm saying. These are things that the courts have found. They also repeat the biggest lie of all. 62 judges considered their cases and they were denied on the evidence. That's what they said in the debate. No, no case was ever heard. They always were rejected on the basis of standing or some other technicality, but the evidence was never really weighed. Look, nothing these people will do surprises me. Nothing whatsoever. I think the political impact here, though, will backfire.
Roger Stone did nothing wrong. They wanna get me like I'm Roger Stone. They wanna get me like I'm Roger Stone. They wanna frame me like I'm Roger Stone. They wanna frame me like I'm Roger Stone.